The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply. USAA.
On today's episode of the Retro Gamers Podcast, Rich DePinto joins the pod to guest host as we react to the latest Nintendo Switch 2 news and review the best and worst video games produced by LJN. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Retro Gamers Podcast, episode 408. Anthony here, and joining me as co-host for this week, please welcome back Rich.
Hey, glad to be back. Thank you.
Good to see you again. You were on just like a couple months ago, like 3 months ago. We were talking about Secret Level, the series on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
And did you ever go back and finish the ones that you didn't see?
I have a 2-year-old.
That's the easiest way to say no.
Yes.
Yes. You have a 2-year-old. The end. No discussion. Well, when you get a chance, I still think you should go back because I think you missed a couple of good ones.
Especially the Keanu one.
Yeah, you would want to see the Keanu Reeves one, and the one that took place on the island with the Thor-like character was kind of funny. So definitely worth seeing. Yeah. But obviously always good to have you back. So thank you so much for joining me, and we have a really fun topic to talk about today. But we're going to hold off on that just to cover a few bits of retro news before we get to that.
Hold on. I don't know if I'd consider the word fun as the word to describe it, but we'll go there. We'll get there.
Well, I want it to feel like it's fun so people will, tune in.
Fair enough.
So it's a fun topic about maybe a not so fun set of games, but we'll get to that in a little bit. The first thing I want to talk about, again, a couple bits of retro news. It was announced a few weeks ago that the Legend of Zelda movie from Sony, the live action movie from Sony, is going to release on March 26th, 2027. Super excited about that. But now, I think it was like a week or so ago, Sega announced that Sonic the Hedgehog 4, they're up to their 4th movie already, which is great. Don't shake your head. They've been very fun movies.
It's more, I can't believe how quickly it's going. Like the fact that we're up to 4 already. Yeah. I feel like one just came out.
Well, one did just come out last year. So, and you know what? If anything, Sonic, not Sonic, but Sega, to tie back to last week's episode, or the last episode I had where two middle-aged guys trying to work it all out. And I talked about the Sega Genesis versus the Super Nintendo and the big console wars in the 90s, and how Sega was always super quick to churn out things, and Nintendo would take their time. And I feel like we're in that place right now too, because this is going to be the first live action Nintendo movie, I want to say, since the Super Mario Brothers movie in '93.
Yeah.
After they got burnt.
We don't talk about that one.
No, we don't talk about that one. But after they got burned by that, like they kind of stayed out of Hollywood from a live action standpoint for about 30 years. Yeah.
Really funny. So some of my students are gamers. Mm-hmm. And I showed them because they had never heard of the live action Super Mario Brothers movie.
Oh my.
And I was like, this was a Goomba. And they were like, what is that? Mm-hmm. And then I showed them Koopa, and they're like, does he have a rocket launcher? I'm like, we don't talk about that.
No.
And then I showed them the jump boots, and they were just like, what did they do? And I said, you kind of have to experience it, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it was just all kinds of a mess, right? Like cult classic mess, but mess nonetheless. But now, with the success of the, Super Mario Brothers animated film that came out a few years ago, Nintendo seems a little bit more comfortable, I think, to jump into the live action world. And now they're doing that with Legend of Zelda, But then Sega announced that Sonic 4, which I was about to say, will be releasing on March 19th, 2027. So exactly 1 week before the Zelda movie. So really, really interesting that we're gonna like, I don't know if like March is going to become like the video game movie playground because the Super Mario Brothers animated movie, when it was released, I want to say it's 3 years now, right? Three? Has it been
April,
3 years?
April or March it came out.
Came out in April. It was like early, but it was early April. It was
Yeah,
like April 4th or 5th or something like that. So it's like, it seems like there's this window building for video game movies. So, but just, I thought it was really interesting that we're going to get two video game movies a week apart.
hmm
And I wonder how that's going to fare because the Sonic movies have been they've been very successful. I mean, I think it's now crossed, the three movies have crossed $1 billion at the box office
they're
between all
fun.
three.
It's like they embrace, and I think that's one of the things that's important about a lot of these video game movies. Like the source material is absurd, it's ridiculous.
Hmm.
Embrace it and just run with it. Like
Yep.
the Super Mario Brothers movie literally was poking fun at itself for its absurdity.
Yep.
It was great. Like, and this is the fourth Sonic movie, so we know what we're in for in terms of the Sonic movies. The Zelda movie, I seriously hope they do not do that thing where like you remember the Master of the Universe movie came out in the 80s.
Oh, yes.
Let's take all of these really cool characters from Eternia, which you really want to see live action, and just bring them to Earth. And I'm like, ugh, I really hope they do not do the same with
No.
the Zelda
No,
character.
I don't think they're going to do anything like that because I think thanks to technological advancements, right, in film and I think, and plus people are more receptive, I think, to the fantasy genre because ultimately, like Zelda's like it's going to be like it's a fantasy epic kind of thing,
Well, I
and I
mean,
think
it's Game of Thrones, except it's video games.
yeah, exactly, and I think they can put it in its own world. They don't have to worry about coming to Earth anymore. Whereas I feel like movies in the 80s, early 90s, it's like you really couldn't portray a fantasy world that well. So they kind of would always try and like connect. Like I feel like they would try and connect it with Earth. It's like, how do we just bring it into Earth? Because it's easier to film on Earth than to try and create this whole landscape, fantasy landscape type of thing.
I also
Although,
think also the execs being worried about how audiences would react.
right. I think all of that went out the window when Lord of the Rings became ridiculously successful. I think Lord of the Rings, in my opinion, not to keep talking movies, but in my opinion, Lord of the Rings, I think, opened the door where it's like, no, it's okay to create an entire fantasy world and leave it there. People will buy into it. And I think, and now 25 years later,
Yeah.
um, we're living in that reality with films.
So one of the things, if I go back to the Zelda movie for a minute,
Yeah.
um, they would never do it, but man, I would love, love, love to see them do this. Is when you played Metroid Dread,
Yes.
and when Samus spoke in Metroid Dread, and she spoke in an alien language, I love that. I
Okay.
absolutely loved it. I would love to see like Link and Zelda speaking in an alien language. They never would do it.
Yeah.
I like to me, as much as I love Breath of the Wild, anytime Zelda spoke, I was just kind of cringing a little bit. I didn't
Oh,
love
interesting.
this. Um, but that said, I would have liked to have had a little bit of that, like I said, that little alien type of language where it's a little more, um, I don't know, like we've never heard Link speak outside of what, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, but the thing I would argue against that is that in the games themselves, everybody speaks English, or the Japanese games, obviously they speak Japanese. So to me, I think it would be a little odd to create a language just for this world because that's never been done before. If it had been done before, like they have the ancient Hyrulean language,
hmm
but it's no longer, as far as we can tell, like in the world itself, it's not. spoken anymore. So, but that would be an interesting take, though. I'll give you that.
Again, they would never do it, and I couldn't imagine any kid sitting through an hour and a half, 2 hour movie, reading subtitles. Never gonna happen.
Yeah, yeah, you're definitely not going to get that.
Listen,
So,
as an adult sitting there, I would love to see something like that. Do I think that would happen? No.
mhm. Well, maybe in the future, maybe down the line type of thing. We don't know. Or, if there are flashback scenes to like history and stuff like that, if that was in the ancient language, that
Mm,
to me would probably bridge the gap. So,
that would be cool. Yeah.
yeah. But, we have a couple of years before these two movies come out. I'm very curious to see how they perform back to back and against each other.
Mm,
So,
you know, no, doesn't.
yeah, well, obviously, I would love to see both of them succeed. So, time will tell on those. And then the other thing I really wanted to touch on, just really quickly, since big news dropped with the Nintendo Direct, a couple of, by the time this episode drops, it will have been at least a couple of weeks. But the Switch 2
Hmm.
was revealed. Uh, More surprisingly to me was the release date, of June 5th. Only two, they gave it a 2-month window, like from when they announced it. So this is coming really, really fast. And they let out the specs. They showed off some games and just general thoughts, Rich.
I know, for me, you know me, I'm a huge Metroid fan. Um, I would say, Metroid Prime really looked like a typical Prime, like
Mhm.
any of the Metroid Prime games. Probably a little bit more prettier than especially those ones were back in the day. But I would have to say that Metroid I thought looked good. Uh, Mario Kart, really interested to see what's going to happen with that whole open world. I think
Yeah.
it's really kind of interesting.
Yeah, Mario Kart World definitely looked interesting to me. The new Donkey Kong game looked really cool. Um, and like Metroid Prime was the one where I just kind of turned away only because I'm not a first person perspective gamer, so I never played any of the Metroid Primes.
Right.
And I heard, and obviously I heard really good things about, the GameCube ones. So,
I played one, two, and three. I beat all of them. Two and three, I did to 100% on both of them.
wow.
Um, so I mean, like, I really, really enjoyed both of those, and I've heard some really interesting theories as to what's going to happen with four, and I'm kind of like, okay, that would be kind of interesting.
Hmm.
But we got to wait and see what's going to actually happen with the story here.
Of course. And then what are your thoughts on the Switch 2 not being backwards compatible with Switch games?
Nintendo, I mean, I would have loved it for it to be. I'll be honest. The fact that it's not, Nintendo's got to make its money.
Yeah. No, fair story. It was funny when I heard it originally, I got annoyed with it. I was like, oh man, I was like, how can you not do that? I'm like with the, because that's just a thing to do. And then I was going through the history of Nintendo in my brain, and I was like, you know what? I go, very few of their systems were backwards compatible. The only ones that were really backwards compatible were the Wii. The Wii was backwards compatible with GameCube, and then the Wii U was backwards compatible with the Wii. And
Right.
that's it. No other systems in their history have done that. Um, Sony seems to be the one, I think, who has been the most backwards compatible.
Right. They always go back at least, even the three was originally backwards compatible with two, but eventually they got rid of that and it was only backwards compatible with PS1 games.
Flip that. Yeah. The original three went all the way back to PS1, and then it was just backwards to PS2.
Right.
So, and then obviously, and the PS5 is backwards with the PS4. So, and Xbox did it a bit too. Like 360, your 360 played your Xbox games, right?
Yeah, and then the one plays the 360 games.
Yep. And then but it took a while. I
Yeah,
think, didn't it take a while before they were able to do that? Yeah, it took some time for that. So being backwards compatible isn't always necessarily a great selling point. Obviously, it's a great, I mean, it is a great selling point, but it's not a must-have like it used to be.
right.
So, and then everything becomes available online for you to download or stream because that's the thing to do.
But even still, it's like, like one of the things I sit there and I wonder about. Like I've got my 360 and my Xbox One literally sitting on top of the other, and I'm like, why am I holding on to both though?
Mm.
Both playing. Whereas at least now, like the Switch, you still are going to have your Switch. Now you'll have your Switch too, and you can play, take both. But I know a lot of people like to just sell the one and then go get to the other one.
And get the next one. Yeah, not everybody collects them, you know. In terms of the 360 and the Xbox One, I'll never get rid of my 360 because I have X-Men the arcade game on it, and you can't get that anywhere else.
Oh,
I did not download the Simpsons arcade game, so I missed out on that one. But having the X-Men arcade game on a console makes me very happy. So that's why I'm going to hang on to that. And then the other thing about the Switch, just really quickly, the Switch 2, that they have finally announced that Nintendo's finally decided to catch up with the rest of the consoles
mhm.
and offer game chat. So yeah, I don't know what took them so long to just give in on that. I mean, I know how controlling they are with with everything that they do. But they finally caved and are now allowing it. And you don't have to, you don't have to download like a Nintendo app to do a separate conversation. And it's just happened in game, which is nice.
Right. And what are your thoughts about the 450 price tag? I know some people are kind of like up in arms about the 450 price tag for it.
That I don't see much of an issue with that. The the PS5 was 500.
Right.
The the Xbox Series X when it came out, I think it came out at 4, right?
Or I don't
Yeah.
know. Never bought it, so
Yeah, so everything the Series X I never bought either, but they all seem to fall within. They're all falling within that range. So the 450, I heard it and I was just like, yeah, that's about right. More people are up in arms about the price of the games as
yeah.
opposed to there's a lot online about yeah, people are telling Nintendo to drop the price because the games are all going to be like $80.
But here's the thing, like I remember the Super Nintendo games were like 80 bucks originally, and the
Yep.
N64 games were like around
Yeah.
that price originally. Yeah, eventually they started
Mhm.
to come down a little bit, but I think people have gotten used to the idea of the Wii was $50 games, and then the Switch games were 60, and it's like, all
Mhm.
right. But like again, as you pointed out, like this was much more of the norm, being more like that 80, 70, $80 price range.
Yeah. Well, we've been stuck in the 60 range for a while now, so it was kind of inevitable
Yeah.
that it was going to jump up. I think if they had jumped it up to 70 instead of 80, it might have been a little bit more
Palatable.
yeah, a little more palatable. But then again, people are already up in arms about Grand Theft Auto 6 and they're talking about $100 price tag for that game and everybody's losing their mind.
Wow.
Yeah. But again, when you think about it, GTA 5 has been around for like 15 years,
Right.
right?
The amount of support that that game has gotten,
Yeah,
even if you paid the full $60 for that game, you got your money's worth out of that game.
you did. You definitely did. And if they give support for 6 for like that like if GTA 6 hangs on for like a decade, $100 price tag isn't going to seem like anything. Now, granted, it's still expensive in the moment. It is. It like the idea of paying $100 for a game right now, even for me, I'm just like, I don't want to pay, I don't want to spend that.
Right.
But if I know I'm going to play the game forever, which is what happens with these GTA games now, might not be so bad. Or you do what everybody else does. Wait a year, it'll drop to 20.
But the other thing, could you imagine spending $100 on a Bethesda game?
No,
Yeah.
no, definitely not. but yeah, but yeah. So the price tags on the games for Switch 2 are a little up in the air, but reveal a pretty good lineup for it. So, and like I said, June 5th isn't that far away, so we don't have too long to wait and find out just how good a system it is. I'll go on the record and say I'm not going to buy it day one.
Hmm.
Um, Usually a Nintendo system for me is I will purchase it when there is a Mario game or a Zelda game coming out for it. That's usually when I will run to get it.
Right. Ironically, I'm going to be the one to probably get it before you would because of the Metroid.
Yeah, you probably will. So I'll sit it out for a little bit, I think.
Yep. I'll play
Uh,
Hotel. I'll bring it around and let you tinker with it.
yeah, and that's fine. But yeah, so that's the retro news for this week.
Yep.
Just wanted to cover those two things.
Um, I think the thing I'm most looking forward to with it, though,
Yeah.
GameCube, being the GameCube games being available on it.
Oh yeah, the GameCube Online is definitely that's a good selling point as well because you can't access the GameCube library unless you have a GameCube at home.
Right.
So also a plus. Yeah. So yeah, we'll see how it does. I mean, I have no doubt it's gonna do well because it's Nintendo. They're just they're the standard, you
Yeah.
know. So yeah. The Retro Gamers Podcast is brought to you by Old School Gamer Magazine. Sign up for as little as $20 per year for 6 issues that include feature articles, interviews with retro programmers, new and old product reviews, and more. If you look carefully, you'll even see an article or two penned by yours truly. You can head over to oldschoolgamermagazine.com/retrogamerspodcast and sign up so they know where you heard about it. Old School Gamer is dedicated to you, the old school retro gamers from the arcades to your home. And I think it's time, Rich, that we get into our topic. And I'm going to thank you in advance for writing this one out with me because I know it was a little bit of a painful experience.
Yeah, this was painful.
Yeah.
Not
Yep. And this week, what we're actually talking about is we are talking about LJN video games.
mm,
And for those of you who have never played an LJN game, I'm assuming people watching this podcast or listening to this podcast have played them, but on the off chance that you haven't played an LJN game, for the most part, it is quite the chore. In fact, I think what I'm going to wind up calling this episode is like LJN, the best of the worst.
yeah, yeah,
So, because let's just face it, LJN games were not a walk in the park for at least when they first came out on the Nintendo. There was some rough going there.
yeah. There was some man that just I literally sat there and just was like, why? Like, how did anybody test play this? Because this is not fun.
Yeah. Nope, true. And we're gonna get into the games in a little bit. First, I just wanted to touch on a little bit of LJN's history, and there isn't a ton of history with them, but there's some. LJN Toys Limited was founded in 1967
Really,
by, yeah, they were a toy company first. They were a toy company first. The man who founded it was Jack Friedman. I'll bring his name up again later. It was then it was acquired by MCA in 1985, and it was during this time that it became a video game company on top of a toy company. Before it was eventually sold to Acclaim in 1990, and then Acclaim held on to it until they dissolved the LJN name in 1994.
Hmm.
But where LJN's success came from was through toy licenses first. And what they did was they licensed television and films in order to create their toys and make their money. And they had some heavy hitters like E.T.
Mm-hmm.
They did E.T. toys. They had Brooke Shields as a license.
Really?
Yeah, because there were Brooke Shields dolls back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And then Thundercats, which we know well.
LJN, yeah.
Yeah, and probably I want to say like that probably their biggest moneymaker was World Wrestling Federation in the 80s because the big figures.
Yep, the big
Those,
ones that we used to just bounce all over the place.
yeah, the big rubber figures. Those were LJN. So those were some of their big licenses in the 80s. And then they also got into some interesting toys like toy guns was a big thing for them. And the reason why I bring that up is because there was a big controversy with the toy guns they did, because I don't know if you remember these, Rich. I actually remember it because as remember their toy guns specifically as I was reading it, because they did a series of water pistols that were released, and the sell point behind these water pistols were that they looked like real guns. Like, yes, like they put out like Uzis and stuff like that.
I think
That
the Uzi.
Yeah, I remember the Uzi more than anything, that were water pistols and they would shoot water. It didn't take them long for getting into trouble with those because um, three children, between the ages of three teenagers actually between the ages of 13 and 19, were shot and killed by the police while wielding these water pistols. And on top of that, people were using them to rob stores because they looked real.
Right.
So there was a whole big issue with that. And then LJN, you know, because of lawsuits and things like that, they re-released them. And these I remember really well too. They released them with the orange cap on the
Uh,
front of the water pistols. Do you remember those?
yep.
Yep. And yeah, so I just wanted to bring that up because that was just a really interesting thing. But then while they were after MCA acquired LJN, they got into the video game industry. And what they did was they took advantage of what worked for them with their toy licenses. They knew they went after, you go after popular brands, and in this case, go after like film or television shows and try to make video games out of them. And that's basically where they started in 1987. And it started with Gotcha. Do you remember the game Gotcha with the
Dude.
light zapper? Yeah, and they actually did a license with Gotcha that released toy water pistols, of course.
Of course.
And so they started with Gotcha, and then they moved more into their TV and film licenses. And this is where the gaming part gets really interesting because the first couple of games that came out. Now, Rich, just to reveal this now, last week before we recorded this episode, you were here, you were at my house, and we were playing through a bunch of LJN games that I owned. And oddly enough, it's strange too because for all of the bad games that LJN had, I have a lot of them.
You did. I was surprised how many you have.
I'm very surprised with how many I have, and I'm actually surprised that there are two that I don't, and we'll get to that. But two of the earliest games that they released were in 1987 were Jaws and Karate Kid, which I have right here. And Rich, we played both of
Oh,
these. We played both of these when you were here, but these were just kind of the beginning of what they did. They did a bunch of TV and film licenses. They made a whole lot of money off of them. In fact, 70 by 1990, before they sold to Acclaim, 75% of their $70 million in sales were from video games alone. So like toys were only doing 25%.
wow. But remember back in the 80s, I mean, like everybody had a Nintendo and everybody was playing games. Like
Yep.
it's everywhere.
Yeah. And films were a perfect, quote unquote commercial to sell a video game. If you saw the film and you loved the film, hey, you can play the game of the film at home.
So, like, if
Um,
you went and saw Jaws 4 and you loved Jaws 4, you can go and play the game of Jaws 4.
exactly. But and we'll get back to that. I'm just going to finish the little bio on LJN. So in 1990, LJN their business started to turn south. They were losing money, so Jack Friedman wound up selling it to Acclaim, and then Acclaim was using the LJN label on Nintendo and Super Nintendo games for a little while before they just ended LJN in 1994. They just called it a day. And oddly enough, they resurrected LJN in 2000 just for one game release on the Dreamcast, which I thought was kind of weird.
Which game?
It was called Spirit of Speed 1937. It was a racing game.
Huh.
Yeah, you would think they would have like revitalized it just to release like a game that was in their library, like, or a name they had in their library. But no, it was just this.
That's what I thought you were going to go with.
Yeah, but no, not at all. And so, and that was the end of LJN, technically in 94, not in 2000. And Jack Friedman, whose name, I brought up as the person who created LJN, and the reason why I'm bringing him up again is after LJN was over, he went on he founded THQ, which I had no idea he did. And more importantly, Jack's Pacific, which is a monster toy licensee right now, or licensor. So he definitely, succeeded after he sold LJM, which was nice. But now let's get back to the games. Okay.
All right.
So, and like I said, Rich, you were here. We played a bunch of them. And that was an experience.
I'm forgiving you for making me play those.
Well, you don't have to forgive me. It's already over. So, and this is our catharsis for it, where this is how we just got to let it go, right? We're going to let it all go. And so I wanted to go back to the first couple that we did play, and which were two of the earliest ones with the LJN label. And trust me, when you saw this label on a game, like when you see it now, you automatically just assume the games are not good. Yeah. So we played Jaws, we played Karate Kid. Rich, did you play either of these when you were a kid?
Both of them.
Both of them. And now coming back to them as an adult, what did you think? Let's start with the Karate Kid.
Going back to Karate Kid, I hated the Karate Kid back in the day. I remember being super excited for it because again, 80s man, like everybody watched the Karate Kid. Everybody loved Danny. And here we are going back and replaying it. And I'm just like, man, this game is just awful. The amount of times I got stuck in an awkward spot where I just wound up watching my energy go down.
Yep.
But on the plus side, I actually did, what was it? I think 2 or 3 times I dodged the hammer.
You dodged the swinging hammer, which still gave you no points because you needed to do 4.
Yep. But still, hey, listen, I actually managed. Usually I would just always either get knocked off right away or I would get 1 and then boom, I was knocked off again.
Yeah. So, yeah, and my experience is similar. Like I had this game as a kid. I obviously still own it, still sitting here, right? And I remember playing it and thinking it was really weird because they released the game after the second movie came out, right? But the first movie was so memorable. The second movie, there was nothing wrong with the second movie. It's just that the first movie was so memorable. And when I remember first playing this game thinking like, I go, this is weird. I was like, because from the first film, all they put in there was the tournament that happens at the, at the back half of the movie, or the last third of the movie. And in the game, you get through that in about 2 or 3 minutes.
Not even, probably.
Yeah. And then the rest of the game takes place in Okinawa from part 2. And I just remember feeling gypped when that happened because I was like, I love that first movie. And I wanted to play as Daniel-san in the first movie more than just like for 2 minutes. But even getting past that, going through the levels, to your point, the hitboxes were just terrible.
Ridiculous. The throwing the cabbage was just weird.
Yeah, people throwing cabbage at you. There are birds and sticks flying in the wind and hitting you. And to your point, like you said, you get stuck in places and then you have an enemy on either side of you and they just basically...
just follow you back and forth.
Yeah, they follow you back and forth until you die. I
wound up just falling to my death randomly. Yep. Like I would get hit and then go flying back because of the wind on the one level to fall into a pit to die.
Yep.
Come on.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of problems with this game. The other issue I had with it too was you were able to collect special moves. You were able to collect crane kicks and you were able to collect drum punches, which were like the two signature moves Daniel does in the first two movies, which is great because it's like if you get in trouble, use a power move. The only problem is the NES had two buttons, and I guess LJN, whoever developed the game, didn't know what to do to assign a special way for you to access these special moves. So you would collect them, and then they would just what?
Just you select, just like hit select once, it goes to the kick. Hit it
Yeah.
again, to the punch. Hit it again, you go back to normal. Come on, not hard.
Yeah, exactly. But instead, you would just randomly use them up when you press your button.
Right.
But yeah, you press the punch button, there go your drum punches. You press the kick button, there go your crane kicks. They're just gone. So that was unfortunate. Now, did you ever beat this game?
Not even close.
Okay, so I beat this game a long time ago. I don't think I've beaten it recently, but I beat it a long time ago. If I remember correctly, the end after you save Kumiko at the end from Chosen, you just get a text screen, which was typical for NES games sometimes.
Thank you for playing.
Something like that.
Yep.
So definitely not a good one.
Yep.
Moving on to Jaws.
Yeah, you played that one.
I did play this one, but not only did I play it, but I beat it.
That was the only one we beat that at that point.
Yeah, I think this was the only one we beat the day that we played everything. Now with Jaws, what are your thoughts on it?
Just call it Grind the video game.
It is definitely grinding.
You're literally just grinding. And I said to you there was an analogy I made to another NES game when I was playing it, and I still stand by that. I don't want to say you got to watch the video to be able to see that analogy, but yeah, it really was just, man, grind fest. And then my personal favorite is I totally forgot about the last sequence with Jaws coming up out of the water.
Yep.
He looks like he's doing a pirouette as he's like coming up out of the water.
Yes, he does this little spin.
Yeah.
Which is kind of hysterical.
No, I mean, like, I forgot about the submarine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I even once got remotely close to beating him. Playing that game, especially as an adult now, there was the one song that you and I just kept singing over and over throughout it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So many memories with this game for me because I'm going to go against the grain on it. This was a game I actually enjoyed playing when I was younger. I did. I know that it was very grindy, but back then, a grinding game didn't matter. The concept of it really didn't take hold on me. So I had no problem playing through it. And I think also why I enjoyed it so much. Yes, the movie was terrible, right? Jaws 4 was a terrible movie. But I remember seeing Jaws 4 in the theater when I was a kid. So I connected to the game just off of that. And on top of it, for all the LJN games that they made, like this game kind of stuck to the Jaws 4 film. I mean, there's not a lot to it, obviously. There's a shark attacking you and stuff, but they kept the characters legitimate. They were marine biologists, and they're searching for they're searching for Jaws, and then obviously trying to kill Jaws at the end.
The heart monitor thing.
The monitor was in the film. Even the end sequence where Jaws jumps out of the water and you have to stab it with the boat, that was right out of the film too. So like they hit the film marks pretty well. I'm glad they didn't go the route of, well, we're gonna do all the Jaws movies in a row. Although it would have been interesting if they did Jaws 3, which happened at the
3D.
And maybe not even in 3D, but just the fact that you were at like an aquarium or whatever, like a SeaWorld type of place.
Yep.
So Jaws, I don't put Jaws on my hate list for LJN.
At the Hyundai Getaway Sales Event, get deals so right, it almost feels wrong. Now's the best time to get that Hyundai you've always wanted. Plus, every new Hyundai comes with America's Best Warranty and 3 years or 36,000 miles of limited complimentary maintenance. Don't think you can get away with all that? Think again. The Hyundai Getaway Sales Event. Visit your local Hyundai dealer today. It's a great day for a new Hyundai.
This episode is brought to you by Loom by Atlassian. Are you feeling stuck at work? Get your team unstuck with Loom video messaging and move work forward. Use Loom to simultaneously record both your screen and yourself to share a quick update, provide feedback, train a colleague, and everything in between. Plus, add Loom AI to your meetings for instant written notes and recordings. Try Loom today at Loom.com. That's LOOM.com.
You know which game they did that actually is not on my hate list, even though I never beat it and never even came close to beating it. But I guess maybe because I was a fan of the films, I always would go back and try to beat it, was the Friday the 13th.
Ah, yes, Friday the 13th, which, by the way, I have sitting right here.
I think somebody bought that for you, didn't they?
Somebody did buy it for me. I wish I could remember his name.
Some jerk.
Yeah, some jerk. Some jerk I'm talking to right now. So yeah, let's talk about the Friday the 13th. We'll switch over to the horror genre, of which there were a couple. So Friday the 13th, in that game, you got to choose from 6 counselors that you played as, and you can actually switch between them during the game. And the object is obviously to kill Jason before he kills all of the camp counselors or kills all of the children in the cabins. There are 15.
I have massive problems with that point of the game compared to the movies because Jason never killed the children.
Yes. Jason never killed the kids because he died when he was a kid at a camp. He always had it out for the camp counselors who were too busy having sex to save him.
Yep.
But yeah, so that was the point of the game was you wielded these 6 different counselors, and they each had a little bit of different abilities. Like 2 of them were faster. A couple of them were like more powerful. So, and then there were kind of 2 in the middle, in between the 2. So your thoughts on this game? Because you said you didn't think this one was as bad.
Don't get me wrong. Like trying to play it now, the game, like, you think that you press up to go down this one path and you're like, oh, I'm going to go left. And then the next thing you know, by going left, you're actually going right on the map.
Yes.
The beeping, because basically, like, now you're trying to run to get to the cabin to stop Jason from killing the kids. I thought that, like, next thing you know, you made a wrong turn when you thought you were making the right turn. And that was just painful in terms of doing that. But that said, there was just, like, the jump factor when you went into a cabin and you knew Jason was in the cabin, and then you kept switching these screens, and then all of a sudden you got that sound effect.
Yeah.
Jason there, and you were like, ah, type of thing. And I thought that was a really cool little feature of the game that they worked into it. I never got any the really cool weapons. The furthest I ever got was the torch.
Oh, okay.
I never got the machete or the pitchfork or anything else like that. Actually, I don't even know if I ever got his mother's sweater.
You had to find it in the woods.
Yeah.
Which was like a maze. If you didn't know where you were going, you would just get lost very easily.
Yep.
Do you ever beat it?
No, I never beat it. I don't think I ever defeated Jason once.
Wow. Okay. I remember. I mean, I've beaten this game many times. In fact, I think once you understand it, you can beat the game in about 15 minutes, which is again one of the other issues behind LJN Games. Longevity is definitely not their strong point in games. Like Jaws, you can finish it about 15 to 20 minutes. Friday the 13th, same thing, because with Friday the 13th, like I said, the only way the game ends is if all 6 counselors die or all the kids die. All you have to do is pick one of the counselors. In my case, I would always pick one of the faster ones. And then go and collect what you need in order to beat Jason quickly. So like, collect the knife, collect the torch, go into the woods, get the sweater, get the machete or the pitchfork, and then go fight Jason. And as you're doing that, if Jason's killing the other counselors, because what'll happen, like you said, you get the notice. There's a timer running down, and if you don't get to where Jason is, your counselor or five of the kids are going to wind up dying. But as long as you collect everything before one set of those dies, you can beat the game. It doesn't matter if you have like six kids left or one, or if you're the last counselor alive. Just as long as those criteria are met, as long as you have one kid and one counselor, you can beat the game and you're fine.
Yeah. So
So
Elm Street was your game, your that was your franchise. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street was definitely my franchise, and it was also the game. Again, LJN got, I mean, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th were huge in the 80s. They were putting out almost like a movie a year
They
at the
were the
time.
small franchise of the 80s.
Yeah, they definitely were. And Nightmare on Elm Street was definitely my favorite horror franchise. Kind of still is. And the LJN game that they came out, this was a very appealing game to me for obviously for the fact that it was based on Nightmare on Elm Street. The game itself, I actually thought they kind of hit some good points on it. Um, Particularly out of the Dream Warriors movie and the Dream Master movie, so 3 and 4, where kids had dream powers. And the same thing happened in this game. You can collect three different dream powers. So when you fell asleep, you could switch between three different characters. You were either a ninja or a wizard or an athlete that would throw javelins.
And they had the different jump too.
And they had a different kind of jump. So like the athlete did a somersault, the wizard kind of floated when he jumped in the air, and the ninja did the jump kick, which would do damage. So I I actually really enjoyed the Nightmare on Elm Street game by LJN. And I think it was just because I was vicariously thinking of the films while I would play the game. I mean, the game itself, again, it's another game where you could probably polish it off in about 30 minutes. In fact, when we played it, when you were here and I was playing it, I got through probably like three
90.
quarters of it.
I
Yeah.
would go more than that. You were basically towards the end there.
Yeah, I was almost at Freddy when I ran out of lives because you only get three continues and then you're done.
Oh,
But the other thing that they did for a selling point for this one is it was a 4-player game. You can actually hook up 4 controllers and have three of your friends with you to play with this.
I mean, you and I back in the day, we did this at how many sleepovers? It's like we would watch one of
Yep.
the movies, and then we would grab like you, me, and a couple of our friends, and we would sit there and I mean, like we never even got close to beating it because with that many players playing it, I mean, anybody who's ever played any of the modern Super Mario Brother games knows the more players you have, the worse it gets.
Yeah, because it's not like we had the benefit of a split screen. It was just all 4 of us on the same screen at the same time. And yeah, it got messy. It
Hmm.
definitely got messy. And but as a single player game, it worked to me. It worked better as a single player game. Maybe a 2-player game at most. 4 was way too many for this game.
Going with the idea of the Super Mario Brothers games where it's 4 players now. Half the fun is just torturing the one friend who really wants to play and beat the game, and the rest of us just derp around and end up causing mischief and havoc. Um,
Yes.
like, could you imagine playing this game with Jack?
No.
Jack would just be like doing the most random things and constantly causing us to die.
Yes.
But that's Jack. Jack is an agent of chaos.
Correct. Yeah, and I'm the one that always wants to beat the game. That's me.
Yep.
I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to be distracted. It's like, all right, let's focus and beat the game. But again, Nightmare on Elm Street to me, one of the better LJN ones. And I know we were talking. I know I said earlier we're talking about the best of the worst. I don't think any of these games hold up to almost any other like successful game franchise. So let's just say that.
Yeah.
But to polish off, I think the movie portion of of LJN's library. There are a couple of other ones I wanted to touch on. One we played, one we didn't. But one I did play in the past. And the next one I wanted to talk about, we actually did play, and you had a little bit of an accomplishment with it. And I'm talking about Back to the Future.
Yep.
And this is my copy of the game, and I still have the instruction booklet,
Wow.
which is nice. This is not my original copy. This belonged to. Actually, there's a sticker on the back. Belonged to Videos America Inc. in Westminster, Massachusetts. So I guess it was a video store.
Traveled a little bit, huh?
Yeah, I traveled a bit. And then there was another one they actually released, Back to the Futures 2 and 3 on NES, and I think it was also on Genesis. Might have been on Super Nintendo, I'm not sure. But
I only ever played the first one. That was it.
oddly enough, this is the only one I remember. I can't, for the life of me, remember playing 2 and 3 on the NES, even though I own it. This was one of those situations where I bought it to collect it, and I never really played it. But I played the Genesis one. And I remember how awful the Genesis one was. So I think that might be the reason why I never tried this one. But getting back to the first one, this one I played a lot. And I also beat this one. And I know you, because you played it here.
Yep.
And man, did you have a hard time.
I cannot get past what was it? The
Lou's Cafe.
Yeah, I could never get past the cafe. Never ever. Because you gotta get past those 50 bullies coming to beat you up, and you took over, and I think it was like the second try, and you did it, boom, no problem. Like you went all the way to the 99.
Yes, I went all the way to the 99 with Lorraine in the library when she was throwing hearts at you really, really fast.
Yep. And I said there's no way in hell I would have gotten past that either.
Yep.
Then the other one was I had never played the guitar portion of it, and I always wanted to play the guitar portion of it.
At the dance, yeah.
And you were very gracious enough to get me to that point and let me take over. And yeah, you got to watch the video to see how well I do with it.
Yeah, that's definitely worth watching. And I will post video of that because it was hysterical. I remember beating this game. And again, like I will go on the record and say this is a bad game. This is just flat out a bad game. You're running through the streets. You're trying to collect clocks so that your photo of you and your brother and sister don't disappear, which is right from the movie. But while you're going through the streets, you're dodging bullies, workmen carrying invisible glass, hula hoop girls that are shooting things at you. I don't know if it's bubblegum or whatever. And then, of course, the bees.
The bees were the worst.
The bees that would just go sideways and then swing around and come back at you.
Go off the screen, back.
Yep. And just to get through, yeah, and that is all, like, those were just all the regular levels that you had to get through to get to these other special spots. The main spots from the film, which were the cafe, the library at the school, the dance, the Enchantment Under the Sea dance, and then finally the clock tower, which we did not get to when you were here, where you get to send Marty back to 1985.
Going to something you said before, and I think this is really funny, is all these games were so accurate to the movies, though, to a certain degree. Like as inaccurate as they were, and as terrible as they were, they all had scenes directly from the movies in there.
Yeah. Well, I think what LJN tried to do, at least with these games, is they tried to keep they wanted to keep that connection to the films so that people would feel like, oh, I'm getting my money's worth with this game because I'm experiencing the film, but I'm in control. And I totally get that. So I give them credit for that. It's just the execution of it.
Yeah,
yeah, it's like, because finding elements to fill in the gameplay portion, because obviously you can't just have the movie moments. It's like, how do you fill in the gaps with that? Like with Back to the Future, it's like you're just running up a street over and over and over again to get to these 4 movie moments.
Yeah.
Like that's where it fails. It's like, yeah, I love the fact you're capturing the movie moments. Same thing with like going back Karate Kid. It's like, we're going to put the tournament in the movie because we can create that in a game easily, right? One-on-one fighting type of thing. And then after that, it just becomes a side scroller.
Yeah.
And a bad one at that,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And then, like you said, with Jaws, Jaws is just a grinding game. You do the same thing over and over and over again until you get the final movie moment of stabbing Jaws.
Yep.
So, yeah, so it was really just the filler portions of it that they just didn't like. If you had that Karate Kid game, if you took the Karate Kid game, the first one, and again, this is just now fantasy creating, right? And you just created like
Bad dudes.
Bad Dudes, Double Dragon, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, 2, right? The arcade game. You did a side-scrolling beat 'em up with Karate Kid, and you got to go through all the movie scenes. You know, when he first encounters the Cobra Kai, the Halloween event, the beach.
Yep.
There were plenty of moments in the movies that you can play out. And then obviously also step back, take liberties, and create a couple of levels, because that's what these games do for filler. I feel like those would have been more successful than just, oh, we're going to have you run across the same board over and over again until you get to these moments. But again, I also think that these were getting churned out fast so they can take advantage of the films.
Right.
And that's also part of the problem too. Stepping away from the movie genre, I want to touch on oh wait, I'm sorry. There's one more movie I want to touch on. We didn't play it,
Right.
but this one was this game was completely different from all of the other movie games that we were talking about here. And it was Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
I was really hoping we were going to play it. I really was looking forward to going back into that.
Yeah, and oddly enough, of all of the LJN games I own, Roger Rabbit's one that I don't have, and I'm actually very surprised because I actually really enjoyed Roger Rabbit when I played it as a kid because I loved the movie so much. The game is just terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way around it.
I never beat it, but I remember like they drop you in there. There's no hint or whatsoever as to where to go, what to do. They give you items if I remember right. I mean, I'm trying to remember back 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So if I remember right, they give you items. They don't tell you what the items do or what the items are for. You have to just figure this stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what am I doing?
Yeah. And again, what they did was they tried to recreate the murder mystery portion of the film where you're playing you're the detective Eddie Valiant and you have Roger with you, going on this adventure. And to me, it kind of played almost like the way a Maniac Mansion game played,
Mhm.
except you weren't telling Eddie what to do. You were moving him around on the board, right? You weren't saying, look in here, do this. And to your point, you had to collect different things, but then you had to figure out what they did for certain. So in other words, like if you wanted to get in the Ink and Paint Club, you needed to find the password for the Ink and Paint Club and then present it so you can get inside.
But if you found the password before that, you would have no idea what this was.
Correct. You would just find a password and you're like, well, what is this password for? Or what do you have to do to unlock access to Toontown? Because you were able to go to Toontown in Benny, the taxi, but it's blocked and you have no idea how to unblock it until you do certain things. So it was a lot of wandering around and trial and error unless you had some type of help, whether it was a Nintendo hotline or something like that. This game was also popular for, not popular, but one of the well-known things or memorable things from the game was there was a phone number that you found in the game, and if you called it back in the 80s, you actually got like a voice message of Jessica Rabbit, if I'm not mistaken.
I remember the phone number. I don't remember who it was. I remember.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Jessica Rabbit. But yeah, to your point, like I remember playing through the game and beating the game I don't know how I did it. I don't know if I got like I don't know if I used Nintendo Power or whatever it was, but I remember beating the game. And again, like I said, I enjoyed the kind of game that it was. They just pulled it off so badly.
Hmm. Constant theme.
Yep, constant theme where we're going to capture the elements from the film. You had the weasels in there, you had Judge Doom. Like I said, you had Benny, you had Jessica Rabbit, you had all the characters in there,
Game Club, Toontown, like you had all of that.
all the locations, everything was in there, but man, they just forgot how to make it fun,
Yep.
is what they did.
I go back to my initial statement earlier, which was, did anybody test these games before they actually went and play like sold them? And I'm gonna go with probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Well, and then
I think you're on mute.
Workday starting to sound the same?
I think you're on mute.
Find something that sounds better for your career on LinkedIn. With LinkedIn Job Collections, you can browse curated collections by relevant industries and benefits, like flex PTO or hybrid workplaces, so you can find the right job for you. Get started at linkedin.com/jobs. Finding where you fit. LinkedIn knows how.
We off? 30 seconds of carefree bliss.
Oof, like wind in your hair carefree.
Oh, like using Clorox Disinfecting All-Purpose Cleaner in the home carefree.
Yes!
Like dog slobbing on the coffee table and cleaning it with Clorox Carefree.
He's on a roll now.
Spit toothpaste on the faucet.
You got it. You got it.
Peanut butter on the light switch.
Oh, spritz, spritz.
Spritz, spritz. Clorox, man. Clean feels good.
Okay, we're back.
Use as directed.
and then LJN went out, and this is something that I know both of us should have been really excited about. They went out and they got the license to Marvel
Mm-hmm.
and started making Marvel games. And this is probably when I'm going to switch over to, we'll start talking about not just NES, but we'll start talking about Super Nintendo, because they put out Marvel games on both NES, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis. And the NES game I remember right off the bat was X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
The Uncanny X-Men. And I don't own the game. I probably should have it in my collection just to have it, but I will say flat out, Uncanny X-Men on NES is probably one of the worst games ever made, period. I despise that game so much. It's one of those ones where it's like, if they all disappeared, I'd be okay with that.
Mm-hmm. And then in the video, I played Wolverine. And I was like, how is this game Wolverine?
Yeah.
Like
Wolverine.
That was, hey, we have a game. All right, let's put a license on it.
Yeah, more or less. Like wasn't it weird that like you had to take out his claws? Like, were you able to keep his claws out, or did they retract after a while?
I chose when to retract them. Which again, like, how would I keep the claws not always out?
Yeah, it didn't make any sense to put them away. And then I remember there was a Wolverine game. I don't remember which game it was. It might have been a Game Boy game or something like that, where you took the claws out and you had a power bar for how long the claws could stay out. And when you ran out of power, that you couldn't use them anymore, which made no sense whatsoever. I don't know if that was an LJN game, but I don't think it was this one.
Or if you're going to do something like that, then just have it recharged, so then eventually they can, pop back out again.
Yeah, well, no, and that's essentially what it did. But again, you're limiting something that the character should be able to use all the time, so it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, Wolverine was a side scroller, but it just wasn't fun.
Yeah,
was the problem. Again, it was a lot of just going through, going left to right, doing a couple of things here and there, but there was just nothing that really jumped out that made it interesting.
So moving on, my favorite character is Spider-Man.
Of course.
And with Spider-Man, one of the things I remember being super excited for Maximum Carnage.
Yes.
And I know I'm probably in more of the minority on this one, but I remember playing that and going like, this game is trash. I hated it. I think I was expecting it more to play like what's that? Streets of Rage.
Ah, okay.
I remember playing it and I was like, this is just clunky beyond belief.
Mm.
And I hated that element of it.
Well, I think this is where we'll diverge because I love Maximum Carnage. I thought this was a good representation. Again, compared to all of the other games that they made, LJN. I thought this was a good representation of the comic book, specifically the Maximum Carnage story, which is why it's called Maximum Carnage. They actually tell the story with all of the characters involved. Granted, you don't control them, but like Cloak and Dagger are in there,
Uh,
right? Shriek is in there and stuff, and they play out the actual storyline from the comics in the game, and I thought that was well done. Could the beat 'em up portion of it been better? Yes, but I still think they did a really good job with capture, especially at this point when it was hard to capture like Spider-Man's powers and what they could do. And I thought that they did that with the webbing. Like you could swing, you can pull an enemy near you. You got to choose between Spider-Man and Venom when you got to a certain point in the game. So I thought they hit their marks really well with this one. And this one I still go back to and play. This one and Separation Anxiety, which they also made.
mhm.
Yeah. Um, the one that they did make that I wasn't all that thrilled with and I wanted to be was Spider-Man and the X-Men in Arcade's Revenge.
Game was terrible.
Awful. I feel like this was the groundwork for what became Separation Anxiety and Maximum Carnage. But again, like I don't know what was going on with them in the X-Men that they couldn't figure out because the X-Men had really cool powers, you know? And Arcade, I loved the comic books with Arcade in them because I love the concept of Murder World.
Right.
And
I'm sorry, I'm sidestepping for a second. You don't remember offhand who made the original X-Men for the Genesis, do you?
no, I don't. But I can find that out really, really quickly with the power of the internet. X-Men for Genesis was made by the producer was Ettore Annunziata. I have no idea who that is. He did Echo the Dolphin as well. But I don't see like a developer
Right.
listed for it. It was just maybe just released by Sega.
Maybe. Because
Yeah.
it felt like they nailed the X-Men powers. Like that
Mhm.
was a great one.
Yeah. Well, I think the issue that they had with this one was they didn't create they didn't create levels that were generic for the X-Men to go through. Each X-Men was trapped in their own murder world level and they had to escape it. And part of what they did with them is they kind of hindered their powers in them. Also, based on the comic book, like they literally took the storyline from the comic book and threw it in the game. So, for example, like when you play in as Storm, Storm's level is underwater because in the comic book, that's what happened to her. She was stuck in a place where she was going underwater. So her weather powers weren't working in the game for her. It really did. Yeah, and and they did that with each one of them. So it just wasn't as fun,
Right.
which was the problem. And then this is one, and you can see this one was actually released on the Genesis under the Flying Edge brand, which was still considered LJN. They had like multiple when Acclaim acquired LJN, they started releasing games through LJN but under different names. And I know Flying Edge released a lot of their stuff overseas. So like if you bought a European version of the game, it was a Flying Edge game.
Gotcha.
So yeah, so Spider-Man vs. X-Men, they did not do well, I agree. But I still will say Maximum Carnage might have been one of their best.
I need to replay it. I need to go back and try it again.
I think you do. I think you might actually like it. You might like it better than you remember. And then the other one that they had was Wolverine Adamantium Rage, which I also have.
Never played that one.
This one I thought they did a better job, especially compared to the NES version. I thought they did a better job with this one. Um, they had a bunch of Wolverine specific enemies in it, like Shinobi Shaw, Sabretooth, Cyber, Lady Deathstrike was in this. So they touch on a lot of stuff there. And again, side scrolling action. But this one again looks more like a traditional side scrolling platformer.
Right.
So again, I thought they did a better job at this. They definitely did a better job overall, I think, when they went 16-bit. And also Acclaim was actually a pretty good game developer. So if they had their eye on LJN, that's probably why the quality improved.
Because I was going to say going with the one that I remember that I really liked was Alien 3 for the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, and talk about that one because I honestly don't remember playing it.
So you know me, I love my Alien franchise. I don't care how bad an Alien movie is, I will go and I will watch it and I will love it. But for me, Alien 3, I love the fact that you could switch between the pulse rifle, the grenade launcher, flamethrower, and you had to go and you had to find all the prisoners that were basically stuck up and they were about to get the face hugger on them. And the part of the game that I did not like was you had a time limit to get to everybody. And
Oh,
it got like very, very hard to find. Um, and I would say if there's one knock I had on it was the difficulty in that game was through the roof. But all in all, like I would say if you could remove just the time limit, I think the game would actually be a lot of fun. But the unfortunate part is I think outside of a Game Genie, that ain't happening.
I wonder if they put the time limit in the game because the game would have been short.
Probably.
Like that's always whenever I see whenever I see a time limit added to a game, I'm like, oh, this must be a short game because they want you to replay it over and over again until you like memorize it all so you can beat it. They also did Terminator 2 games. They got the license for Terminator 2 as well. I can't say that I played those though.
Was that the arcade one?
Oh, geez, I can't imagine it would have been.
I'm gonna say probably not.
No, it was the NES game.
Yeah, no, I only ever played the arcade version.
I only played the arcade version too, and the arcade version was awesome. So they also did the Super Nintendo version, Super Nintendo and Genesis version.
Yeah.
But just again for a game I did not play, just to give you some of the review scores for it. This is Terminator 2 on the Super Nintendo and the Genesis. 22% out of 100. 12% out of 100, 26 out of 100.
That good, huh?
Yeah, 15 out of 100.
Well, that's good for an LJN game, though.
Actually, true. Very, very true. All right, the last, well, actually, second to last. One of the other things I wanted to bring up, because I brought up X-Men as one of the worst games of all time, right? But it does have competition from another LJN game that was beyond terrible. TNC Surf Design on the NES could very well be the worst game ever made.
I would agree with that statement.
We talk about ET on Atari 2600 being bad. I don't know.
I will never forget I've tried multiple times trying to figure out that damn surfing. And no matter what you do, it never ever works.
Nope. Well, and also they had the skateboarding part I couldn't even get through. Like I could not get through the first level in this game.
Yep.
Period.
Nope.
Did you know that they made a second TNC game? I didn't know this.
Only recently did I discover that. But
Yeah, so there was another one called it was TNC Town and Country. Town and Country 2 Thrilla's Surfari. SURF. Surfari. Again, this was no. This was not like this is not like it's I'm sorry I own this. Let's just say that. And also where I got it from, no idea. I think I bought like a batch from somebody one day. And that happened to be in the pile.
It's got to be the only way.
Yeah. All right, so the last thing that I want to touch on with them, and as I said earlier, this will touch on something earlier I said. LJN, to me, I think their biggest success was when they got the license from World Wrestling Federation, right? The toys were huge, but they didn't just get the toy rights, they got the video game rights. And they did put out a lot of WWF video games on the NES, on the Super Nintendo, on the Sega Genesis. Now, the NES ones, we did play one of them.
Yes.
We did.
WrestleMania.
Yes, and we played WrestleMania Challenge, which was their first attempt at a wrestling video game. And Rich, what were your thoughts with this one?
My memory of it was better than watching you replay it.
Yeah.
I actually remember playing that when I was a kid and really enjoying it. But I also remember I had the NES Max. So like a lot of getting the moves to come out was all about button mashing.
Yes.
So if you have the turbo, you could just plow through everybody.
Of course.
And what I wound up doing with that game was I plowed through everybody because of the turbo. Watching you play it, I was just like, oh, this is painful.
Yeah. Well, first off, with the WWF license, LJN released 9 wrestling games out of the 35 games they made. They only released 35 games.
Oh wow.
So 25% of those releases were WWF games.
That's funny.
WrestleMania Challenge was the first one that they did. And this one followed up WrestleMania on the NES, which if you go back and play that, like if you thought this one was bad, first.
Yeah.
Yeah, terrible. First off, the first issue with this game, as soon as you start playing it, is the isometric view for the wrestling ring. The wrestling ring is a diamond in the game, basically. It's almost like they took their MLB game, which we didn't talk about. They took their MLB game, they took their baseball diamond, and they just threw it in here and said, all right, make it a ring.
Color swap.
Yes. So that was a problem. They hit some good marks on it with the roster that they chose for the time. Like they got a lot of the popular guys from WWF in the game. They got their themes, their music in the game, which was a big plus. But the bigger problem with it is just the actual fighting itself. Very, very limited in what you can do. The AI, when you're playing the computer, just literally wanders around the ring, kind of in a circle, until you get close enough to them. It was just very, very clunky, very, very hard to get to play. It was also, again, at the time, there wasn't a lot you can do because, again, NES games were limited. You only had 3 modes. It was either singles, tag team, or a 3-on-3 Survivor Series, which was what I played all the time with it. But yeah, just
no,
just no bueno. And then what?
Who was your main back in the day?
Who was my guy? Macho Man. Always Macho Man.
I was Ultimate Warrior.
Warrior. When I was a kid, Warrior was a big deal to me. But even as a Warrior fan, because I was never a Hogan fan, even as a Warrior fan, Macho Man was always number one for me, whether he was good or bad. Macho Man, Macho King, perfect. Absolutely loved it. A couple of other NES games they put out. They did, aside from WrestleMania Challenge, they released WrestleMania Steel Cage Challenge. And in that one, they actually got the ring right, where it was more, you got a side view of the ring. It was a little bit better, or almost like a 3/4-ish kind of thing, which worked better. And then they also released, probably towards the end of the Nintendo run in the US, King of the Ring. And this was well after Genesis and Super Nintendo were out. I think this came out in 93 or 94 on the NES. And again, they got the characters right, but the limitations for the NES at that point, when you had the Super Nintendo, it just was, it was long gone. They released a couple of games on the Game Boy, but then when they went 16-bit, this is when I really think, and again, Acclaim had already owned them at the time. This is when I think they really got better at it, because they released 3 games. One was Super WrestleMania. Then we had the Royal Rumble. And after Royal Rumble, we had Raw. And this one came out December of 94. So this was probably the last game LJN released. Again, this was, and at this point too, you'll see on some of these, like the first two were released as Flying Edge on Genesis, and then Raw was Acclaim, because at that point I think LJN was gone. And
Yeah.
then I also, oddly enough, have them on Super Nintendo. Royal Rumble was released as LJN, and so was Raw.
Hmm.
So I guess depending on where you, which version you got, it was
Right.
all different.
Now,
Now,
the wrestling at this point, I was done with wrestling by that point, so I didn't even touch any of these.
you grew up. Okay. So
That's
I'll just speak to these really briefly. Because all three of them, for the most part, play very, very similarly. Like there are little enhancements with each one. Like Super WrestleMania as the first one was the more limited of the two. You had I think eight or 10 wrestlers to choose from. What was interesting about the Super WrestleMania one, I think it was 10. What was interesting about the Super WrestleMania one was that you had single tag team Survivor Series, again, similar to WrestleMania Challenge on the NES. But the graphics were better, the characters were better, the moves were better. And they actually did something smart on the Genesis and the Super Nintendo, because the games, at least this one, Super WrestleMania, had different wrestlers. So if you had both consoles, you could buy both games and get different wrestlers on them,
That's smart.
which was smart, because I remember Super WrestleMania on the Super Nintendo had guys like Jake the Snake Roberts, Earthquake, and Typhoon, whereas this one in my hand here, Super WrestleMania, had Papa Shango, British Bulldog. Those might have been the different ones, but they had different ones, which was really cool. Yep. But, and then Royal Rumble, when Royal Rumble came out and they added the Royal Rumble option to the game, this is when I think it really, like, this is when I think they really started to shine. And again, they did they had a couple of different characters in each game. The Super Nintendo one had Mr. Perfect. The Genesis one, if I remember correctly, I think had Hacksaw Jim Duggan. So they they still did a little bit of varying, not a lot,
Right.
just a couple. But at the same time, you had a Royal Rumble option where 6 characters were in the ring at once. They started introducing things like steel chairs that you can use,
Right.
and fun stuff like that. And again, you were able to lock up and do wrestling moves, and the characters' finishers were in the game. So like this is when it really got fun. And then when Raw came out, Raw took all of those things, just made it cleaner, smoother, better. I think both of these games had the same roster on them, so there really wasn't, there was no difference in terms of the roster here.
Difference. That's it.
Yeah. But again, super fun. Really awesome. And again, I've told this story I told the story on the show multiple times, but Raw for the Super Nintendo was the game that I convinced my mother to give me 3 weeks before Christmas, because I knew she bought it for me.
Nice.
And I promised her that I would play it all the way to Christmas and then after. And I held on to that promise, because I played this game incessantly.
Nice.
Absolutely loved this game. And I still love this game. I still love going back and playing this game. So again, when Acclaim picked up LJN, I thought quality definitely improved. No question about it. There was still some questionable items. But for the most part, I think when they hit the 16-bit era, they definitely got better with that guidance from Acclaim. And then eventually, Acclaim just realized they're just going to release everything under the Acclaim name, not
LJN.
and LJN went bye-bye. But I guess also maybe they had to keep LJN around for the licenses they owned, because when they Acclaim absorbed them, they absorbed the licenses with them. So I think we've covered a lot here.
Yeah, I would say so.
So to wrap this up, Rich, I'm going to ask you, if you had to pick the best LJN game that they made. Now, for as much as we've like really hammered them for terrible games,
Right.
We did give praise to a few.
Yes.
So if you had to pick one and say this is the best one that they did, which one would it be?
Alien 3.
Alien 3. I had a feeling you were just going to go there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, see, and for me, it's a toss up for me. If I have to pick the one that I played the most back in the day that I really enjoyed, it's definitely what I just said, which was Raw. Right? But if I had to step back and just look at them all and say, okay, which one just from a general standpoint, I think would have the most replayability, most fun aspect and everything like that, I got to go with Maximum Carnage.
Now you're gonna make me go back and replay it.
I am going to make you go back and replay this.
Okay.
You really need to. I think you will appreciate it more than you remember.
Next time I'm on, we gotta do this where you ask me about it.
Yeah, next time you're over, we'll sit down, we'll play some Maximum Carnage. We did not get to the 16-bit era when you were visiting last week. We just stuck with the NES. Okay, now here's a fun one. Which one is the worst of the worst of LJN? And now that's where the real competition is.
Yeah. I'm just looking at my list here. I'd have to say for me it was Wolverine.
Wolverine?
Yeah.
All right, that's fair. Well, you know what? I'm going to stick with the Marvel theme with you. Uncanny X-Men, Unforgivable.
See, I think I rented it once, played barely into it, and I returned it.
Absolutely, 100% Unforgivable. And you know, I think that concludes our dissection of LJN Games. If anything, we did it so you didn't have to out there.
Yeah.
This was more or less kind of a rough go. I actually, honestly, like I spoke more fondly of a bunch of them, but I think it's really more because of nostalgia and memory of playing them at a time when, even as a kid, like bad games were still fun because you had them.
Right.
So you played them.
Right.
You know, going back and playing them, oof, some of them. I will never play TNC again. That goes without saying.
I will never play Wolverine.
Yeah, but for everybody out there who listens and watches, we would love to hear your thoughts on LJN Games. Which one was your favorite? Which one did you absolutely despise? Did you not play any LJN games? Was there one that you couldn't get enough of? Definitely sound off about that. Yeah. And you can do that on Facebook.com/Retro Gamers Podcast, on Instagram and Blue Sky at Retro Gamers Podcast. You can listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts. You can watch us on YouTube and Spotify at Retro Gamers Podcast, or you can email us at email@theretrogamers.com. And please, when you check us out, make sure you like and subscribe and share. We are always happy to get those recommendations, and we're always happy to respond to you as well, whether you comment on a video or if you listen to the show and you want to comment there, please do. Rich, I cannot thank you enough for going through this topic with me, because I know it was a chore.
You owe me for this one.
I definitely owe you, and just send the bill. I'll make sure to ignore it.
Sounds good.
And with that, everybody, we will catch you next time on the Retro Gamers Podcast.